The moment that shattered my perception of family happened at my sister's wedding, a spectacle witnessed by hundreds of our guests. In the middle of that crowd, my own mother raised her hand and struck me squarely across the face. The sting on my cheek was nothing compared to the shock that froze me in place. Her violent reaction had a single unbelievable source: my firm refusal to surrender the keys and ownership of my penthouse apartment to my sister. Hello, my name is Olivia. At 31 years old, I had built a life and a home for myself, but I was completely unprepared for the sheer depth of humiliation that my own family would unleash upon me in such a public setting. The day had begun with all the appearances of a normal, joyous celebration. My younger sister, Hannah, who is 25, was preparing to marry Kyle, a musician whose career is very much still in the phase of finding itself. The wedding itself was an enormous production, held in an exclusive country club featuring a custom-designed gown and the elegant sounds of a string quartet. My parents had spared no expense, which was a particularly bitter pill for me to swallow, given how often they had claimed we didn't have the money to offer me any financial support when I was struggling to launch my own career and life. As I stood there, watching Hannah glide through what looked like a flawless fairy tale, I managed to genuinely feel a spark of happiness and pride for her. That fragile feeling was violently crushed when my father maneuvered me into a quiet corner, near the towering dessert table. In that deceptively calm, businesslike tone he reserves for delivering ultimatums, he said, "We need to have a discussion about your penthouse." Almost on cue, my mother appeared, her smile as sharp and dangerous as broken glass. She immediately launched into their prepared argument. "That apartment is far too large for just one person," she stated, as if it were an obvious fact. "And your sister and her husband need a proper place to begin their married life." I was so taken aback that I could only ask if they were joking. My father coolly replied that they were perfectly serious, explaining that the young couple needed a fresh start and that this was only fair. "Family helps family," he concluded, as if that simple phrase justified everything. I looked from one to the other, utterly stunned by their audacity. "I am not giving up my home," I stated, my voice firm despite my disbelief. It was then that my mother's composure shattered. Her hand flew through the air, connecting with my face in a sharp, loud crack. The force of the slap was so sudden and shocking that my mind couldn't immediately process it. As my cheek burned, she leaned in and hissed the words, "Ungrateful child." In that instant, the entire reception hall fell into a dead, crushing silence, with every pair of eyes fixed directly on me. To truly understand the depth of that betrayal, I need to rewind and explain what that home represented. I've built my life as a software engineer. The last 10 years have been a relentless climb from the bottom, from unpaid internships and surviving on packets of cheap ramen noodles to a position where I could finally afford the home I had always envisioned. It's a modern penthouse in the heart of the city, featuring breathtaking floor-to-ceiling windows that paint the walls with sunlight. And it includes a small, perfect studio space where I spend my weekends losing myself in painting. That apartment was more than just a place to live. It was the physical manifestation of every sacrifice I had ever made. It took years of disciplined saving and relentless work. Every single promotion one earned, every late night I spent taking on extra freelance projects. Every bit of that extra income was meticulously set aside and poured into the investment for that place. It was my sanctuary, the reward for my own labor, and it was unequivocally mine. My parents, however, never saw it that way. To them, my personal achievements were not milestones to be celebrated, but merely assets to be redistributed to make life more convenient for everyone else, with a special focus on my sister, Hannah. Throughout our entire lives, she was always the golden child. They labeled her the creative one, the dreamer, and they opened their wallets to fund her art school tuition, her inspirational trips abroad, and even her monthly rent during the many periods she couldn't manage to hold down a job. I, on the other hand, was permanently cast as the responsible one. In our family's language, that was simply a polite translation for the daughter who could be reliably guilt-tripped into swooping in, and fixing whatever problem arose. When Hannah needed money to fund a new art portfolio, I was expected to help. When she was short on her rent, I was pressured to help. But this latest demand crossed a line that I never knew existed. They weren't asking for money this time. They were demanding the very foundation of the life I had built for myself, taught at the wedding. In the shocking moments after the slap landed on my cheek, I stood there completely frozen in place. The air was thick with the sound of horrified whispers, and I saw the glowing screens of phones as guests recorded the entire humiliating scene. Hannah rushed over, but not to see if I was okay. Instead, she immediately came to our mother's defense. "Olivia, why do you always have to make everything about you?" She snapped, her voice sharp with accusation. "This is supposed to be my wedding day. You already have so much. Why is it so difficult for you to just share?" Through the shock and the sting, my voice trembled, but the words were clear. "Because it's mine." Just when I believed the situation could not possibly become more humiliating, my father decided to escalate it. He calmly picked up a champagne glass and tapped it with a spoon, calling for the attention of the entire room. A hush fell over the crowd as he painted on a proud, beaming smile. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for a wonderful announcement," he began, his voice booming with false warmth. "We are so proud to share that our daughter Olivia, in her incredible generosity, has offered her beautiful penthouse apartment to Hannah and Kyle. They'll be able to start their married life there while they get on their feet." A wave of approving applause and cheerful congratulations immediately rippled through the sea of guests. I stood frozen in the center of it all, feeling the world shrink to the burning spot on my cheek, my body going completely numb with a fresh wave of betrayal. The audacity of the lie, delivered so smoothly to hundreds of people, stole the air from my lungs. Finding a shred of my voice, I managed to shout over the clapping. "I never agreed to that." My mother instantly closed the distance between us, her face a mask of feigned affection for the onlookers, but her words were a venomous whisper meant only for me. "Stop this right now, Olivia. Do not dare embarrass us in front of all these people." The sheer hypocrisy of her statement broke the last of my restraint. "It's too late for that," I shot back, my own voice low and shaking with fury. "You already did that when you hit me." The remainder of the evening passed in a nauseating blur of forced, brittle smiles and cold, judgmental shoulders turned against me. My aunts and uncles seemed to actively avoid making eye contact, finding sudden interest in their napkins or the dance floor whenever I passed by. I caught my cousins huddled together, whispering behind their hands while casting sharp, disapproving glances in my direction. The most direct condemnation came from Uncle Mike, who brushed past me and muttered under his breath, "A real shame. Your parents raised you to be better than this, Olivia." It became painfully clear that my parents had been diligently working the room long before their public ambush. They had preemptively woven a narrative for anyone who would listen, painting me as the selfish and withholding daughter who was coldly refusing to help her own sister start her married life. By the time the wedding cake was ceremoniously cut and served, it felt as if half the room was looking directly at me. Their eyes filled with a collective disdain that branded me as the heartless monster of a family fairy tale. And Hannah? In a move that should not have surprised me, she delivered the final, calculated blow of the evening. It happened during the bouquet toss. As she positioned herself with her back to the crowd of single women, she turned her head slightly, caught my eye, and with a saccharine smile plastered on her face, she said just loudly enough for those nearby, "To hear, you've always been so jealous of me, Olivia. I think that's the real reason you're still alone." A wave of uncomfortable, awkward laughter rippled through the guest. I didn't wait to see the flowers fall. I turned and walked out of the venue before the bouquet even had a chance to hit the floor. But here's the fundamental truth about who I am. I do not stay down for long. They had violated every boundary, but I still had my footing and more. Crucially, I had proof. You see, my penthouse was never just a piece of property. It was a legally protected asset, fully paid for with the title held exclusively in my name. And All those years when my parents had consistently borrowed money from me to fund Hannah's endless stream of art projects and emergencies, I had, perhaps out of a quiet instinct for self-preservation, kept a meticulous record of it all. Every bank transfer, every transaction, and every pleading text message was saved and documented. So I took action. I quietly hired a formidable lawyer just 3 days after the wedding. My parents received a formal, crisp letter from my attorney. It was a clear legal notice stating unequivocally that they were to cease and desist from making any claims or public announcements involving my property. The letter clarified that any continuation of such behavior would be treated as harassment and defamation. With legal consequences to follow. Simultaneously, I posted a short, carefully worded message on my social media. It was calm, polite, and strictly factual. To everyone who was present at my sister Hannah's wedding, I feel the need to make a clarification. I never offered my home to anyone. The altercation that occurred was a result of my mother assaulting me after I refused this. Demand. This situation is now being handled through legal channels. I would appreciate your respect for my privacy during this time. The post exploded within our small social circle. The people who had secretly filmed the slap began sharing their clips, and suddenly the entire narrative began to shift and crumble. Relatives who had pointedly ignored me at the reception started sending hesitant, apologetic messages. Even Hannah texted me, crying, claiming she never realized things had gotten so out of hand. My mother, however, called me in a blind rage. "How could you dare to humiliate our family like this?" She screamed into the phone. I took a deep, steadying breath, my grip firm on the phone. "You did that to yourselves," I replied with a calm I did not know I possessed. Then I simply hung up. It has now been 3 months since the wedding. I'm still living in my beautiful penthouse, surrounded by my thriving plants, my unfinished canvases, and most importantly, my hard-won peace. Hannah and Kyle eventually moved into a small, modest apartment across town. My parents have not spoken a single word to me since that last phone call, and honestly, I am more than okay with that. Because through this fire, I realized something incredibly powerful. Sometimes the word family does not mean the people you are born to. It means the people who truly respect your boundaries and value your well-being. So, if you have ever been made to feel ashamed for choosing yourself, please remember this: you are not selfish for saying no. You are strong for finally, truly meaning it.